afternoon and welcome to the Balie. My name is Iante Mosselman and I will moderate this program for you. And this afternoon we will be talking about Ukraine, its past and its present, together with two special guests, Ukrainian writer Oksana Zabuzhko and Dutch-Ukrainian writer Lisa Weda. And central to our conversation is this incredible book, The Museum of Abandoned Secrets, beautifully translated by Marine Snoek en Jos Moordgat, Museum van Verlaten Geheimen, in Dutch. Who has read it? Maybe a short question. Okay, quite a lot, but not everyone. I will be careful with the spoilers. Before we begin, I have a brief announcement. This program is being live streamed and recorded for YouTube. And our main character in this book works for television. And she says very well that a television program dies at the moment the end credits end and the commercials begin. But this is not the case anymore. The live stream never dies. So please, if you want to ask something, there's room for questions at the end. Be aware that your question will be viewable on YouTube for eternity. Yeah, I say it because, you know, sometimes people are very inappropriate, but you can do that at the bar. Welcome, come in. There's a seat over there and maybe a seat over and over there. Yeah, please. So today's question will focus on Ukrainian history and how that history and culture have often been misunderstood. And I will first speak with Oksana Zabuzhko about the novel, and afterwards Lisa Weda will join us and will expand the conversations to questions of narrative, representation, and the importance of recognizing Ukrainian culture on its own terms. To begin, I'd like to introduce Oksana Zabuzhko. She is one of Ukraine's leading contemporary authors and public intellectuals. She grew up in Kyiv, where she studied philosophy and earned a PhD in the philosophy of art. She gained international recognition with her first novel, Fieldwork in Ukrainian Sex, later described as one of the most influential Ukrainian books of the post-independence period. Her work has been translated into many languages, and she currently serves as the vice president of Ukrainian PEN. And today, not anymore. She previously served as the vice president of Ukrainian PEN. And today we're incredibly honored and happy that she is with us today. Please give her a warm applause. Thank you for being here today with us.
Thanks for having me.
So maybe to start, before we dive into the theme of this afternoon, I wanted to ask you something else first. Because in this book, there's a letter to the Dutch readers. And you ended with that you wanted to write a story about a happy love.
That's right.
Why did you want to write about a happy love?
Well, because it's much more difficult to do than the unhappy love. Unhappy love has its plot, and happy love, we all were deceived by Tolstoy into believing that all happy families look alike and happy life is actually uninteresting. So I had an ambition to prove that it is not exactly the case, that happy love does have its inner streams, you know, floods and everything. So that explains why I am interested in the long-term stories. In the stories that last longer than one generation or one person's life. Well, in this particular novel, yes, it is a story that covers 3 generations of the same family, well, with one precipitation for those who have not read the novel yet, that the members of this family scattered in time and space don't know about each other. So it takes a kind of a patience for 300 or 400 pages before you understand that all these people are somehow connected. And it's only in the end, after you turn the last page, that a reader sees how they are connected, which none of the characters sees. So it is a kind of a convoluted story, multi-layered and everything. And yes, happy love is something for me, you know, that involves a long prehistory, a long family history, the interaction of intertwining family histories, and all this extremely, you know, Netflix-like plots, which we start losing nowadays because we live in the age of reels, stories, you know, as they are called on TikTok. I'm sorry, you know, I will never forget G.D. Vance's comment during this scandal in the Oval Office. You know, when President Zelensky told him, you are telling us what kind of problems we are having, you were not even in Ukraine once, and G.D. Vance said very thoughtfully, well, I saw reels.
Yeah.
So that's something, you know, which is an epigraph to our times about how we read and how we see stories in terms of reels, in terms of, yes, stories. This TikTok term for reels, it is not story, you know, this is story. And this is the story of a happy love, which makes sense once you come all it through.
And then you said already it spans 6 decades of modern Ukrainian history. But I was wondering where, because it's different generations, did you start with the happy love and then went into the history?
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah?
More or less. It worked. You know, I'm very improper novelist. I think proper novelists should have everything elaborated in advance, knowing, you know, well, what goes where. Whereas myself, okay, I've always felt a little bit, you know, embarrassed with my own approach until I read the same statement in Julio Cortázar. Okay, see, women authors, you know, we are still not quite confident of ourselves, and we need, you know, some male predecessor to
help us.
To help us feeling that it is not that I am such a freak, you know, of a writer. You know, it is just, okay, one of the ways of doing things. So both mine and Cortázar's, okay. I start writing more or less knowing what happened, be it a story or a novel, doesn't matter. More or less knowing what happened. And I keep on writing to find out how exactly. I would have never been able to write a detective story, for instance, knowing in advance who was the murderer. I mean, what motivates you to go through this 400 or something pages, you know? While with this writing through the darkness, writing through the fog, or like running in the darkness with the lighting torch of your writing, making your way lit. And then at a certain point, okay, you see how things start shaping themselves. And then this is the real pleasure of writing.
So does the writing tell you something that you didn't know?
Yes.
And what did you learn from this book?
Oh, lots of things. Lots of things. Well, first of all, I had to interrupt my writing many times to plunge into a research. Because at first, with the first chapters, I had no idea how little I knew and how little was then 20 years ago, because I worked on it in the first decade of the century. It took me some 7 years of hard work and author's research intermittently. So there were, it was kind of a very special lifestyle, like when you start writing a chapter which starts with a character from the Ukrainian insurgent army of the 40s walking through the winter forest. And then you understand all of a sudden, okay, that you being an urban rat, you have never been in a winter forest. And your concept of a winter forest is something like, city park, covered with snow, maybe denser, maybe less civilized, no concrete passes or whatever. To know, all this, another brief comment. I'm sorry, those who have not read my work, you deserve a warning on my part. First of all, I am notorious with the long sentences. There is a special term in Ukrainian criticism, Zabuzhko sentence. The one... No joke. In some other parts of Europe it is called Proustian sentence or whatever, not in Ukraine. In Ukraine it is Zabuzhko sentence, yes. Sentences that take for 3 pages or I don't know how long, doesn't matter. I talk and think the same way that I write. It is not that I make up things, so I'm really terrible on timing, because I start answering a moderator's question, and then I start the digression, and then in brackets, we need a footnote or something, or we need brackets. I love digressions and everything.
It's like a walk, I would say.
Yeah. So that was it. So I had to, 3 characters in this novel. 2 of them from the time, the beginning of the century, because the action of the so-called our times takes place in the years before the Orange Revolution. Before the Orange Revolution, it just, shows how this Orange Revolution was shaping, burdening, so to speak, it ends in spring 2004. And one character, the guy from the guy from the dreams, you know, well, from the lucid dreams that the journalist's lover starts seeing when they fall in love. The person, the guy who belongs to the 40s, who was killed, who died in the 40s, in the ranks of the Ukrainian insurgent army, who remains, you know, unknown and unnamed for both of them, but who played a very considerable part in this entire plot. Every person speaks first person. So I love going after a person's skin. After all, I started as a poet. I made my literary debut as a poet, and I still keep writing poems occasionally, you know, from time to time. So I do love this first-person narration. And of course, once you have a character going through this forest in winter and trying to hide his tracks, and well, of course, you are supposed to imagine, to picture yourself in his body. Okay, so I immediately called my friends in the Carpathian Mountains to inform them that I am coming and that I will be there tomorrow, okay, and I want to go to the forest. So we did. That was an interesting experience. I'm afraid I don't have, you know, another Zabuzhko sentence, you know, to tell you the full story. But yes, it was a kind of an exciting mountaineering. Well, and I did learn a lot, you know, not only about the winter forest, not about the way, you know, it could have been hiding there, you know, in the caves in the winter forest and everything. Speaking of the caves, I have one more story to tell you here. Yeah. Well, if we are having time, okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what I've learned, to answer your question, you see, I remember where. I do remember where the Zabuzhko sentence starts. What I learned while writing, like in the process of writing, I think maybe can be, it was not always a pleasant knowledge, no. I would say the summary, what I've learned about how this world of ours keeps running nowadays is in the chapter 7. Mm-hmm. Which now proves to be, now that this book gets translated in more and more languages, Dutch is the 11th translation. And this chapter number 7 is singled out by most Western readers. My American colleague, an American writer, has recently said that you guys should print it separately and spread like leaflets. It is all about Trump. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it is not, of course. Trump was not anywhere on the political horizon when I was writing it. Well, but yes, it is, you know, the philosophy of this political technology, as they call it. You know, this spin doctors, you know, of the political stage, who stage elections, you know, stage protests, stage all kind of events to implement the scenarios of their own. And in this chapter, which is a dialogue between, develops itself like a dialogue, there are lots of dialogue dialogues in this book between a journalist and
Vadim.
Vadim, kind of oligarch and in the same and political figure in the same time, a businessman who is entering the political stage. So he tries to seduce her into to hire her, basically, you know, for his political campaign. And in the same time, he teaches her, since she was a friend of his late girlfriend. So it's like kind of a family business. He tries to present it like between us, among us, you know, in our circle. So he's teaching her certain things which were not surfacing in media until, I would say, until maybe after 2022. Fully and completely. You know that the Western media started to discuss all these matters not as something happening somewhere in the East, in the former Soviet Union or whatever, well, but something happening right here under our nose. Yes, it is, you know, Russian money are working in our country as well, you know, and we are having Russian assets and on our political stage, on our media stage as well. So these discoveries, has just started, you know, to arrive, and it will be more and more of them. But back then it was a novelty. So I think it is maybe even for the better that this book appears now, you know, one language after another in the West, when the audience is more prepared, you know, to take it not as some exotic Ukrainian story, you know, but something which kind of unites us all on this bloody planet, literally bloody planet. I mean, I'm not cursing, I'm just, you know, offering a definition because it is covered with blood.
He talks about the absence of ideology, about the way propaganda works. And I was wondering, because you write in this book, but also in interviews, it's a big question, but we can handle it. You can handle it, definitely. And you write about the 90s, and that this was a period of naivety.
Yeah.
But you also, you said in an interview, sometimes I look back at it and I think it's a beautiful naivety, maybe. So what happened from this ideological moment, you may call it, to this year, 2003, 2002, where men like Vadim were acting the way he was? Because it's such a short period, it's 12 years.
Well, I think they have been there all the time.
All the time.
They were not making themselves visible. And basically, you know what, my focus in this book, I mean, in fact, you know, Jante, I mean, it was not until recently that it occurred to me that, yes, I've written a book about war, 2010, 2009, you know, when it was completed and submitted to the Ukrainian publisher. So yes, it is a book about war. And for me, the main focus of this, you know, war succession from the World War II, and not just World War II, but the clandestine part, the hidden part of the World War II, which was not pronounced, you know, back in the Soviet times, that started, you know, to come into the public vision after the collapse of the Soviet Union with the advent of the independence in Ukraine. And then what happened on this turn of the century, late 90s, early 2000, yeah? Well, that was the so-called media reform. So my concern was how Ukraine lost information war without any awareness that this war was conducted against Ukraine. The very concept, you know, that was already an information war, and you end up not knowing, as a journalist, you end up not knowing for whom you are working anymore.
And you personally...
That's it. That's universal. That's not only Ukrainian.
No, that happens.
It is just, you know, that we happened to be, you know, on the front line, literally, on the front line of this, you know, global war, so to speak. And we were the first, we were the first prey. We were destined, you know, to learn certain things first, and I wanted to articulate them here. And when Darina, you know, addresses to this, to her predecessor from the 40s, says, now it is our war and we have not lost it yet. Okay, that's the succession, yeah, okay. She keeps on going, she keeps on fighting. Yeah. She wants to make a film, she wants to be, even on her own, okay. Even when, you know, losing her job on her favorite channel and her favorite channel turning into this, some entertainment, cheap stuff, which is not the way it used to be back in the 90s, okay. That's this media reform, big media reform. Okay, she keeps on going. So the world keeps on rolling. Yeah, and what will be next? Okay, Ukrainians keep asking me more than once, do I want to write the succession, the continuation, like, you know, episode, season 2, more episodes, Adrian and Darina now in Euromaidan, Adrian and Darina after 2022 or something. Of course not. The story is complete. Yeah.
But I understand maybe that they ask, because what I loved also about this book, because you have these people, I was going to say men, but then I thought maybe people, like Vadim, who have been there always, but you also have their counterparts, Darina, but also her dad. And I wanted to talk with you about Darina's dad, because he's not in the book because he has passed away. And he was part of the building of the Palats Ukraina. Thank you. Yeah. A palace that was more beautiful than the Kremlin palace, so it had to be made ugly. And her dad, Darina's dad, he fought against this, and he kept on fighting. Even though you write, and in Darina's voice in this book, he could have stopped. Like in the last days of the Soviet Union, there were ways out, she says. You could, you know, describe it as a hallway, and it smells, it's awful, but at the end, you can get out. And he didn't. He kept on fighting, even though he knew what was coming for him. And she reads a book, and it says, and it's a Hamlet quote, Hamlet's inability to act decisively when confronted with the triumph of evil. I think that's a very strong belief that is in this book, why people might long for more of these kind of heroes. But how do you look at Darina's dad? Is this the only way? Because it's a heartbreaking way, because you don't see your children grow up.
Yeah.
It's an ultimate sacrifice.
Okay, Darina's father is, of course, a fictional character. I made him up. But the story is true.
Okay.
The story is true, and I kind of kind of resurrected this story. It's already been half forgotten. There was a suicide committed by an architect, the major architect of the project, and there were attempts. Nobody now knows, the full story, but yes, there was a suicide. The name of this person, has been, restored and surfaced, and I'm happy, that the story of how they tried to make Palace Ukraina ugly back in the 70s, that now it is okay. Now it is a part of Kiev narration, yes. That's the story from the 70s, the story from Darina's childhood, yeah? People like Darina's fathers, the 70s in Ukraine in particular, were the years of the massive purges against intelligentsia. There was this so-called Operation Block. They called it the KGB Operation Block. Like over 20,000 people were dismissed from jobs and from studies, and most of those were never mentioned again. This whole period makes like, the biggest black hole in Ukrainian history of the 20th century, because most of the documents, most of the archives, this is a story about the archive, most of the archives were destroyed before the dismissal of the Soviet Union. So the 70s, I still owe a lot to the 70s, and I know more stories like Darina's fathers, to be articulated and to be told, to be made public, to be publicized, and that was really. There is even a term for it, the suffocated Renaissance. The KGB under Andropov, because the KGB was run by Andropov then, they were having, their own ways, like not like under Stalin, no big public, processes, nothing like this. Very rarely, people were sued on political issues. Mostly it was the classification was criminal. Like, for instance, someone spreading samizdat got his 10 years for economic crime. Economic crime meaning like he was selling books. He was not selling books, okay. He was sharing samizdat, but he got this, economic crime, the so-called Jewish article. He was Jew. So that's kind of a typical approach, You were staging some story, and then you found criminal accusation, and that's why Gorbachev, when he first appeared as the Western sweetheart on the political stage and was asked whether there are political prisoners in the Soviet Union, he said, absurd, absurd, how dare you? Yeah. So it's true, they were not very rarely, some, I don't know, maybe dozens of them, were qualified as political prisoners. But in fact, there were, lots, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of victims of these purges in Ukraine who were silent victims, and Darina's father among them, And yes, that was this Yeah, that's pretty sad. Pretty sad story. Pretty traumatic history of the entire lost generation. I know it from my own family history. You know, people had either to sacrifice their own career, or to sacrifice, their children, you know, not to tell their children anything, not to tell their children the truth. So my target in this particular story was to show that without this hopeless, without this absurd revolt, to put it in Camusian terms, Darina would not be a woman she was. That she got some strength from this pointless, allegedly pointless and hopeless resistance by his father, just because he could not say yes to evil, to the overt, open evil. And maybe, okay, that's exactly this stubbornness in saying no to evil that keeps, in the end, our world rolling.
Yeah. Maybe before I ask you to read something, one question. Because you talk a lot about this book, I think you can read it also in a way as a starter of a conversation between generations. There's many phone calls. Darina has a phone call with her mother. Her boyfriend has a phone call with her father, in which things are said that were never said. And you write also that until the 1990s, you should not say these things to your children because they were dangerous. But also after the 1990s, when you could maybe say these things, people didn't. So can you tell me a little bit about that culture of silence and how you wanted to address it? And what it has done maybe also.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate that question very much. You know, I would say, you know, I did some thinking on that subject, you know, being most immediately engaged with the issue of speaking, you know, and why certain things had been silenced for so long, and what things were silenced, and how are we supposed to, you know, to articulate things that had been not for 3 generations. That's not easy. I think, you know, it all starts with the trauma of the 1933 genocide, the Stalin's man-made famine, which actually turned out to be the bigger trauma for Ukraine, you know, than we were able, you know, to evaluate even back in the 90s. There are things like the 3rd or 4th generation trauma. The same about, by the way, the same about the victims of Holocaust. The 3rd and 4th generation. I've talked a lot, you know, while working on this novel, and later I talked a lot on the Israeli psychologists working with the descendants of the Holocaust victim. There are still, you know, bearing the traces of this transgenerational trauma. Whereas in the Ukrainian case, it is even more complicated because we were having this 3 generations of silence. And silence had been accepted as a strategy of the national survival. What do you know about Ukraine? well, we were not speaking of ourselves that much, either in the 90s or in that century, not until 2014. Not until 2014, even with this, beautiful and bright Orange Revolution of 2004, we did not dare to pronounce certain things. How should I explain this? Like, for instance, like it's under the skin, like, don't brag with your achievements. You don't brag with your achievements, and it is not about of modesty, or any kind of, religious traditions. No. It has absolutely nothing, no moral touch to it. It is just out of fear. No, good people, we don't have anything. We don't have anything. We don't have any bread. We don't have any grain. Please pass away. We don't have him. Because it is dangerous to show that you possess some wealth. The same is about compliments, like to the entire generation of Ukrainian women, it was really a serious training to learn to say yes, thank you, to a compliment. To accept compliment as some kind of, encouraging evaluation. Usually, women start justifying themselves. I'm actually, it's, I got this dress on some, second hand. It was
it's
just
very cheap. Yeah.
Yeah. So things like this, which can be followed on different levels. I love that issue, absolutely. How history shows itself on this immediate molecular, atomic level, on this everyday life, in the kitchen, in bed, in everything, There is no such, there might be such thing as a big history, big narration, this kind of stuff, we are living through now. But in fact, now that we live it through, we know that this is the matter that happens in the kitchen, and in the bed. It still happens on this everyday level, and this is this, female face of history, that I love, to pronounce, to put into words, into novels, into volumes, into in whatever genre. So coming back, to this culture of silence, this strategy, silence as a strategy of survival. It was not until 2014, I reiterate, that we learned that once you don't speak for yourself, there will be someone else speaking for you, and not necessarily in your advantage. And it was really like, waking up in the middle of somebody else's story, because by 2014, Russia has already had some 10 years of information war against Ukraine, selling this scenario of this, failed state, the poorest country in Europe, the no nation, the country which should be taken care of by someone big and powerful, and we know the name of this big and powerful boss, who is supposed to take care of all these small former republics which had suddenly this, separatist ambitions, and which failed as independent states. And yes, our no, we are here. No, we've always been here. No, we want to leave. No, we are not actually that bad as you think we are. It all started with 2014 Maidan, with Euromaidan. And with then, with the annexation of Crimea, and then, with these protests of this eastern and southern part of Ukraine that had been designed by Putin to become a part of Russia back then. So all this, revolts, all these protests, and this entire reaction, that's how we were learning to speak of ourselves, clumsily, awkwardly, not knowing yet, how to put things into words. And that's when the writers became in this primary demand. Yeah, because suddenly nation discovered that, yes, these are the people, who can be useful. It is not only about writing those big unreadable books. It is, for instance, about writing, posts on Facebook page, and of 160,000 followers that I have on my official Facebook page. I'm sure the majority are those who come up and say, oh, I am reading you. Absolutely not the Museum of Abandoned Secrets. They mean they read what I post on public issues, some issues of public importance on Facebook, because this is how the nation learns to speak of itself, by finding proper words. So the end of the culture of silence and speaking as a strategy of survival, that's recent. That's recent. That's post-2014 for Ukrainians. And that explains, I guess, why Ukraine until recently has been, this undiscovered country, like 30 years of independence and still an undiscovered country. Still, that's one of the biggest countries in Europe, and still so many things to learn about it, starting with history, starting with the princely period and Kiev Rus.
But you already knew that you had to be open and you had to speak and you had to write and uncover and stop this silence before 2014. What did you feel that made you want to, put that cover away? Why did you do it?
Well, yeah, I've always felt this way. Goodness, after all, I am a writer. I am a born writer, as they call this species of people. Yeah, really. I mean, when I was little, I was this prodigy child who was fluent in reading at the age of 4 already. And I remember very clearly how I had this ambition at this age, telling to myself before going to bed, when in bed already, when parents switch the light off and say goodbye and give me the goodbye kiss, a good night kiss. So I have to retell my whole day to myself so that it sounded like in a book. That's born writer.
Yeah.
Of course, it never worked this way because I was falling asleep, before I was able to make a story. But I remember the ambition.
It's a beautiful
this
ambition.
Burning ambition, yeah, that your day should make a story like in a book, okay? Your day, your life, the life of your country, okay, doesn't, the scale changes, but the idea, to make a story and to see life in stories, well, that's professional. That's the way, composers see the world in sounds, artists see the world in visual images, and writers see the world in stories. Make a story out of it, yeah.
Thank you. maybe I'm going to ask Lisa to read first, if you're okay. And then we will, because you have a fragment prepared as well, but I think it will be nice to put it in at the end. Is that okay?
It's up to you. You are the boss.
I will do it. I will do it this way. Lisa, are you ready? Yes, please. I will introduce you. Yeah, that's good. Lisa Weda is a Dutch-Ukrainian writer, screenwriter, and virtual reality director. She made her literary debut in 2021 with the novel Alexandra, which intertwines her Ukrainian family history with broader historical events. The book was very well received, earning several nominations and awards, and established her as one of the Netherlands' most promising literary voices. In 2024, she published her second novel, Dans, Dans, Revolutie, Dance, Dance, Revolution, and alongside her literary work, she's an active voice in the Dutch public debate on Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I wanted to say that when I started traveling in Ukraine and talking to my Ukrainian family, it's a whole Zabuzhko sentence. That's all you get. And if you're brought up in the Netherlands, it's so confusing in the beginning because you're like, this was the question. But now we're here. Where are we going to go? So I feel right at home when you're here. All right, we're going to take a bit of a different turn, but I think it will come together with memory and archive and who is talking and why and when. And who shouldn't talk, maybe for a while. So the title is a bit activistic, but fine. The danger of treating Russia as an island / letting Russia treat itself as an island. What is it that makes this inclusion of Russia into every conversation here in the Netherlands such a shitty and dangerous thing to do in conversations surrounding Ukraine, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Georgia, Moldova, etc. It took me a lot of time to get there, here in the both-sidism nation called the Netherlands, where a book like Russian Colonialism 101 by Maxim Eristavi is not a bestseller yet, where Vasil Stus is an unknown poet, Les Courbas an unknown theater director, the book I, Romance, an unknown novel, Maria Primashenko, a painter we maybe once heard of, Halina Kruk, a poet we did not know about, Lesya Ukrainka, not a legendary playwright or author. Of course, there are many Ukrainians here, so they're like, what the fuck? We know everybody. If you're Dutch, please start learning now. Why is there so much space for Russian art, stories, politics, and history here? And why is all art, identity, and culture of surrounding countries, there are many, we should quiz each other if we know them all, practically unknown? I think one of the answers is the following. We treat Russia as interconnected to others, thus convincing ourselves it is part of a bigger system, while Russia treats itself as an island that can cast a shadow upon others surrounding its borders. Even if resistance is the topic of conversation, this is what is happening. We see it in films like Mr. Nobody Against Putin, and I will not even start on the recently released Dutch documentary series Onze Man bij de Vijand, where propaganda flourishes freely in almost every third minute of every episode. There exists only this vacuum. There is no outside world, just Russia. A vacuum makes it possible to excuse yourself for what your country does. Inside problems are not solved unless you let oxygen enter the situation. The same with Ukraine starting to talk in 2014, telling the world that they are an actual country for over 1,000 years. That's very, very long. Moscow was still a puddle of mud. So, just so you know. External powers and shifts have to enter the chat. I think this is TikTok talk. I'm not sure. I'm too old. External powers and shifts have to enter the chat in order for change. It's like an abusive relationship. There are never two parties. There are three. When in the know, the third party can decide to intervene or to enable. If we do not intervene, there will remain this weird, toxic island narrative that surrounds Russia and its rhetoric. And the problem, of the West and the advantage for Russia is that we still let Russia enter every goddamn conversation, thus enabling the current political and cultural status, thus creating a paradoxical, way too big space for this country that would love to lock itself up while disrupting the peaceful lives of others on the other side of their borders. This is an extremely imperial mechanism, both on the in and the outside, and here we are enabling this mechanism. It's us. I'm sorry. Why? Because we here in the West keep giving a lot of space to Russia, thus taking away oxygen for other countries whose stories are way more important right now. Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Lithuania, the list goes on and on. If we don't start to seriously look at all these countries, it is as if we are looking at the current state of the world with one eye open and one eye closed, willingly blindsided. We need to gain more new insights, starting today with Zabuzhko's book. You need to all buy it and read it. Take a vacation. It will take you a week, but you have learned a lot and you need to Google a lot. I discovered Palats Ukraina and I loved it. I didn't know about the story. It's super interesting. Where did I go? Oh, yeah. Because historically, we already have given way too much space to Russia. It's like a scale, een weegschaal, with an immense amount of weight on one side and practically none on the other. It is completely out of balance. And in this unbalanced situation, Russia thrives and other countries lose. And we lose, and the future loses, etc., etc. I see it on every bookshelf in every regular bookstore. For a short amount of time, let's say the first 4 months of the total invasion of Ukraine by Russia, other books were suddenly popular. They got their own shelves, their own sparkling places on book tables, and mostly Ukrainian titles were mixed up with the Russians, and then I had to tell a bookstore seller, like, this is wrong, you need to put it here. That was also a nice thing to do in my free time. And not long after that, everything went back to normal, to Russia and Putin versteht Literatur. And somewhere on the side, a tiny shelf with some books from those other countries. It is an abomination. And this needs to change, permanently. We need to rebalance the scale of cultural and historical knowledge. The age of Russian dominance has to be over. This means, yes, that we, you and me, have to go to work. We have to reshape the memory map of Europe and uncover what has been veiled in the past. We need to undo the island of its island status, let it sink down in its fixed position between all the other unknown countries that were once, 37 years ago, hidden behind the mystical Iron Curtain that turned all these nations, except for Russia, here we go again, into a gray, misty, invisible place. We need to, as Oksana Zabuzhko writes in her novel, play the Ukrainian game called Secret and discover what is hidden underground, no matter what the outcome is. We need to learn new words by heart, words like Holodomor, terms like Zaporizhia Sich, names like Mazepa, Leonid Kravchuk. Who knows who that is? Ukrainians. Yeah. Congratulations. Is anyone feeling left out already or not? Okay. We need to read and inform ourselves about the UIA, the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, and find clear ways to discuss this. We need to start talking about the Kiev neighborhood Podil, the way we talk about our last exciting trip to Vienna. We need to name Kharkiv as a former big avant-garde capital of Europe. We need to dream about the coffee and chocolate from Lviv. I do at least once a week. I can go on for hours listing all things Ukraine you need to know about. There's so much you'll need like 20 years. It's a very big country. Ukraine is a country that has to be read thoroughly now, not tomorrow, now. In the Soviet past, even showing up at a statue of national poet Taras Shevchenko was a forbidden and dangerous act. It was punishable, as Zabuzhko recalls in her whirling novel. A novel where she exhibits her Ukrainian literary greatness and is not afraid to bump heads with everything and everyone. I think that's still happening, so that's quite cool. A novel where she doesn't give a rat's ass about if you know the names, the terms, or the places as a reader. This book is an unapologetic history lesson for all of us. And I'm dead serious. If you like to debate everything and claim to know it all, like Dutch people do, hang out with Ukrainians. It's not for the faint of heart, but you will be rewarded. Toch? Anyway, I challenge you all to invest in reading around Russia, to create more space for other nations and rebalance the scale. Let the island get locked in between other nations that function as mirrors and as historical context. This way we can optimize our totally imperfect whataboutism and boast about what we know, just like we, the Dutch, are notoriously known for in the middle and east of Europe. Now is the time. We are decades too late. But as we say in Dutch, beter laat dan nooit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Maybe to pick up...
You should deliver this in Strasbourg.
I will try.
or in Brussels.
I think one thing we can take maybe from where we ended was that silence won't protect you. And still, I think that is in Western Europe, in the Netherlands, this silence, something that we hold very clearly. How do you look on that?
Well, yeah, I think in the Netherlands we really have a silence problem, actually. Like I already said, we think we know a lot about a lot of stuff, but sometimes we don't, but we still explain other people what it's like in their country. Just like J.D. Vance said, I saw the reels. Most of the time it's not correct. And I think, but maybe this is not really the answer you're looking for, but I've been reading about Ukraine for over, 15 years now, talking to my family too. They are spread across different countries, not just Ukraine, but also Kazakhstan and Russia. These are already totally different conversations and different kinds of silence. But there's also this Soviet imposed silence that is brought to the Netherlands through literature and nonfiction, where if I just dumped a lot of old books that were about nonfiction about Soviet times, and the only word you read when it concerns countries, as you also write in, I think, this book, Mijn langste boektournee, is that the only word that remains is Russia. So there were almost no other nationalities, which makes it extremely impossible to travel back in time and look for the silent gaps in history. And I was lucky, in a way, to have a family, like most Ukrainian families, I guess, who went through it all. So all the layers of silence are with us. The murdered Don Cossacks, the Holodomor, Siberia, the Gulag, fighting in Afghanistan at the end of Soviet times, and not talking about it. But there would always be people missing. And I was the Dutch girl coming into this family like, hey, what's up? So what went wrong? And then everybody was like, let's eat. It took me 8 years to get there. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks.
But then at the same time, I think you put it, maybe we are quite good with words, but at the same time, Europe is, of course, not nearly doing enough. And also not being outspoken enough. Because for a long time, I think we have talked about this not as a, you mentioned Russian colonialism, one-on-one by Maxime Eristavi. We've not thought and not talked about what happened to Ukraine as a continuous colonial past, continuous colonial war, but as a, a thing that geopolitical strife, geopolitical powers, that's what they do, and we're just, or do you not agree?
No, I agree. I was just thinking about a lot of stuff at the same time while you were talking. For my new book, I'm actually researching this in a way of destructing literature in the 30s, so Stalinist times, and also the 40s and 50s in Romania, which had another Stalinist wave. That's one thing I'm thinking about. But maybe the colonial, if you look at literature, for example, we all know Maxim Gorky, who wrote this book, Mother. And there was this Ukrainian translator, Slisarenko, I think was his name, who wanted to translate this book and was immediately put down by Gorky, who said, no, I will not have my book translated to some dialect, which Ukraine isn't. It's a full-blown different language. It's a totally different language. There's a backstory of Slisarenko in the end ending up in the Solovki Gulag camp, where Maxim Gorky went looking for the first time as a tour. So everything also this was in the year 33 and later 37. This translator was executed by the regime. So this is also colonial and an imperial way of destructing destructing identity. It's a total destruction, and it has these, together with the silence and people being afraid to talk, there was also this layer on layer on layer of 30 years and 30 years and 30 years and 30 years, several generations of people. If they wanted to talk, they were silenced. So you had all these renaissances that were killed time after time. I think that's also a colonial act. But there's way more to say about it, I guess.
Well, I would have started, with simple numbers. I mean, who am I to recommend you guys how you should rewrite your textbooks? But deep in my heart, I do believe that you should. You should. Starting, with the textbooks for elementary schools. So when you have this chapter on the Soviet Union, before explaining that the Soviet Union was never a homogeneous country, never, ever. There were attempts to create, Khrushchev was the first one who announced it, as a shining goal to create a new historical community of people, a Soviet nation, melting pot, so to speak, melting pot politics. But still there are discussions whether this Soviet human exists as a species, whether it still survived as a species or not. I don't think that's now the subject matter, whether it exists or not, because more interesting would have been to start with numbers, like how many genocides were performed by the Soviet Union on its own territory within these 70 years. How many people, how many ethnicities, as they were dubbed in Soviet passports, disappeared, were deleted forever, unrestorable from the surface of Earth. And the number is, during Perestroika, there were some publications on that issue, and then they disappeared, of course, later on. The numbers are discussable, but over 100. Over 100 nationalities. Smaller, bigger, whatever. You may call them whatever, tribes, nations. There is just, this grand variety of this Turkic, Finno-Ugric, well, whatever else, you know, nationalities that populate this entire poorly colonized territory named Russia. While in fact, you know, it is just the very archaic, pre-modern land empire, the successor of the Mongolian one. In the textbooks, you have the sample of the land empire, the Mongolian one. I'm sorry, where is Russia? Russia is the land empire, and politically, it is the successor of the Mongolian Empire, yes. So it is just expanding, getting more and more territories, using resources, all kinds of resources, you know, from natural to human, using or rather misusing those resources, and going further and further and further, you know, rather than building, you know, rather than building cities in Siberia, where my father had spent, you know, 6 years of his youth back in the Stalin's times, in the early 50s. Siberia, with all these resources, should have been, I don't know, well, all modern, shining with skyscrapers, high-tech territory, whereas in fact it doesn't have even roads built. And when I wanted, I had this, you know, idea to go and visit the places of my father's exile, and then it appeared that you still cannot get there otherwise than by river.
Yeah.
Yes, by river. Why the hell have you wasted all those thousands and thousands of prisoners' lives? And I know from my late father's story how many young people, you know, were brought there and how many of them died there, you know, in these gold mines. There were gold mines, okay. Gold mines exhausted, okay, and the city is dying, okay, the territory is dying again, and the same rivers that ages ago remain the only road to move from one village to another. What kind of colonization is that? Mongolian. Yeah. Mongolian, archaic, pre-modern, okay. And then, you know, then we are having all these Western intellectuals sitting for some 12 years, you know, in all these talk shows and trying to solve the riddle of the century. What does Putin want? Why he needs Ukraine? Goodness, what an enigma. What a big enigma of the Russian soul, ununderstandable. My God, you know, that's the way they have been living and developing for 5 centuries. Okay, and they've started to, okay, they've exhausted, you know, this efficiency, and they started to collapse back in 1918. And so for the past 100 years or something, the West keeps them from dismemberment, tries to keep them together, God forbid, okay? God forbid Russia will collapse and we'll be having, you know, all these Buryats, Yakuts, and all these other nations we have no idea about. No, please. Have this big umbrella, okay, for all of them, you know, to provide us with the solid sleep in the night, calm and solid sleep in the night. So it is, yes, this mixture, I would say, of, I mean, I really appreciate, you know, this fiery speech of yours. It's, I think it's wonderful. Well, but I think it is some mixture, you know, of ignorance and cowardice, maybe. Cowardice.
Yeah, and I think you also...
you need some intellectual courage you know, to overcome old stereotypes. And once you invest your energy into keeping your old mindsets inherited from from elementary school textbooks untouched, well, then, yeah. Then we've got what we've got, another Ukrainian saying.
We've got what? We hebben wat we hebben. Yeah.
But I've interrupted you.
No. I'm thinking a lot about this ignorance, and I think it has a lot to do with distance still, with physical distance. I think that's a really, really big issue and privilege in the Netherlands to be so far away from what is happening, so very, very close to where we are living, as in the violence and the war and the killing of people on a daily basis. But I was also thinking about something else, but I have to get it back. I think there is this unwillingness to see ourselves as a country enabling, as I wrote, this colonialism, because we have been trading with Russia. We didn't stop trading also. It's still going on. 2 years ago, I was at a conference, and there was this very big group of scientists, Dutch scientists, who had to make a special report for het ministerie van Buitenlandse Zaken. I don't know what it's called. Foreign Affairs. And they made a whole report where maybe in the Netherlands we should start making more business with Moldova and other countries. So the shadow countries nobody knows about, nobody talks about, blah, blah, blah. And at this conference, at the end of the day, one of the people of the foreign thingy department would come to the conference to tell us what the conclusion was. And there was not the main person of the foreign affairs camp, but just some kind of intern person who said, thank you for the 300-page report people have made, but we decided to still keep business going, because what should we otherwise do with all the relationships? And does the war really affect that? So I think it has to do with cowardice.
Absolutely.
Totally.
Absolutely.
And I think being the Netherlands, colonial history is already not our favorite topic.
No, but there's, yeah.
Well.
Yeah, it is.
I think here we come. How much time do we have?
No.
left?
You can. I think everyone's all right? Yeah.
Now that we have touched this issue, okay, I think what makes two of us, guys, I mean Ukraine and Netherlands, that we are both responsible for having produced that monster back in the 18th century. This empire is your brainchild, in a way. Yes.
Yeah, we went with Michiel de Ruiter. He's hanging in St. Petersburg as a mosaic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And our forefathers, okay, they have created this whole bullshit about you now hear from Putin. I mean, since then, the words didn't change. They all come from the Ukrainian Baroque intellectuals of Kiev-Mohyla Academy, the idea of the Orthodox Empire, who will fight the Ottoman Empire in the south, because our forefathers, our dear Cossacks, wanted the free access to the Black Sea shore and to the best black soils on earth, free steppes, yes. And there were Poles, from last but not least. Without Poland, you won't understand this combination. And you won't understand the rise of the Russian Empire and how Muscovy, the kingdom of Muscovy, the Tsardom of Muscovy, became Russian Empire with this so-called European face, Europeanized face. It's been the idea of all those Baroque intellectuals, Stefan Prokopovich, Stefan Giesel, and so on and so forth, For 200 years, you know, we've been providing Russia with a new version of history, giving up this cave part of our story to them, labeling ourselves Little Russia according to the Greek standards. Little Russia, the core. The core and the Great Russia, like Great Greece, colonies. So we are the core, we are the spiritual core. We still are, please don't forget, the capital of the Eastern Christianity.
Yes.
After the collapse of Constantinople, the sanctuary of the Eastern Christianity remained in Kiev. So, yes, here we are, okay, the Orthodox Empire, well, with this military potential of this wild northern Muscovy, to whom we will write the textbooks, whom we will teach to read and write. And for the whole 18th century, there been this, you know, cultural and educational mission of the Ukrainian elite to North Way. Gogol was the last one in this row, the final, I would say, the finale. So while with the Dutch, of course, with the Dutch came the technologies, the material part, the technology, the fleet, all these interesting things, okay, which also, which helped this newly born empire, this Frankenstein monster, to look modernized and advanced also technically. So we are both to blame. The difference is that Ukraine is now kind of, you know, paying for well, Ukraine has already paid dearly, you know, for this one century, for this 18th century of the prosperity of our elites. Well, but okay, we don't have a fear of Russia.
No, and I think that's a big
unlike
difference.
Europeans, we don't have fear. We know them. While with you, okay, it looks for me it looks a little bit, well, ambiguous, okay, but that's up to you. I'm not here I'm not here to give you recommendations. Okay.
Are we afraid?
I don't know if I'm ambiguous, but I think I'm going to skip that one, so
okay.
That's fine. Yeah, we are, and I think we are very much blindsided.
By fear, you think? Because it is interesting, I think, also because you said there is a distance, of course, but then at the same time, in this very hall, there is sometimes, if we organize programs, there is people coming to these events saying that if we show a movie, that there's Nazis on the screen. And so blatantly, people in the audience bringing forward propaganda. Our speakers get sent letters saying that we are a bad institution by these Russian trolls. So we're in the middle of it. So it seems far away, but Russian propagandists are in this very hall sometimes where you're sitting. So it's not too far away. So what is this, would you say, is this blindness that we have?
I think it's we need to let go. Maybe it's not fear. I think it's arrogance, actually. And I think we need to let go of this arrogance very, very fast in order to learn more, in order to speak a different language, in order to maybe, if we're both instigators of what happened with Russia and how it could come so far as it is now, I think we still have time, or should try to save it and turn back. But I think I travel a lot to Eastern Ukraine also, not just to Eastern Europe. Not only Ukraine, but also Romania is a place where I reside a lot, as I have a partner who lives there. And what I see a lot is that when I meet Dutch people who live and work there, they are not even, mostly when they're expats, but I think it happens everywhere, they're really not interested in the culture. They look down on Romanian people and I think it's a bigger part of the problem, because if you look at Europe, a lot of people, the Poles, the Romanians, the Bulgarians, they have been sliding all the way through Europe, doing all the fucking work we don't want to do, because we're lazy assholes and we want to make a lot of money over the backs of other people. But we still what I hear a lot, there are still a lot of stereotypical ways of thinking about people from the Balkan countries, people from Romania, Poland. There's a very big fear, which is not a real fear. For example, traveling to Poland, I go to like the haircutter once in a half year. It's not enough, but fine. And there's one girl who cuts me every time, and she drives a motorcycle. It's quite dangerous to ride a motorcycle. And I told her I was traveling in the summer to Gdansk. I'm pronouncing it wrong.
Gdansk,
yes.
no, right.
It's in the north part of Poland. It's beautiful. It looks like Amsterdam and like Copenhagen. It has a lot of water. You can eat wonderful food. There are hipsters everywhere. And in general, Poland is a beautiful country to travel through, like as is Romania. But I told her, and she was like, are you not afraid to die?
Oh
this is the level we're dealing with. So I love your questions, but we're not there yet. We have to do a lot of stuff in order to just educate people about what the culture is about, what the resistance is about. For example, with Euromaidan, I talked to a poet. I think his name is Ostap Vinniky. He's from Lviv, I believe.
Okay.
And he told me that he was at Maidan protesting, and that there was a European delegation visiting, I think maybe also with Ursula von der Leyen, who then showed up, right, at the Maidan revolution. And he said these people could not understand why we would sacrifice our bodies for this cause. And I think, and it took the Ukrainians only, at that point, 25 years to get there, to realize, okay, it's time, we need to stand up, we need to speak up, we need to talk. This is our country, this is our democracy. A lot is happening, a lot is still going wrong, because in one of your interviews you also said, this is a time of war, how can we be critical of Ukraine, but maybe it has to, I don't know, that's another conversation.
That's another conversation,
yeah, sorry.
yeah, but
I won't segue into that for now, but what I found so interesting is that this fear is very, very real. The fact that you cannot understand or find in yourself that you actually would do that to save your country, to show your Rada that they have to change the way they do politics, that you won't go along with this corrupt stuff that was happening. This is very kort door de bocht, as we say in Dutch. It is a way more complicated history, but I think this is a big difference. And in the same period, I was doing some debates here in the Netherlands, sometimes with very leftist political groups, who didn't even believe that people in Ukraine were owning iPhones or MacBooks. And I just went to Kiev, where there was Wi-Fi in the bus stops. I was like, this is not happening in the Netherlands. We don't have this. I want this too. This is amazing. And of course, there's a lot of need for change, and I'm not putting that under the rug. But I think the level of starting to even talk and think about this and resist, it comes from another place. And sometimes I don't know where. I'm just a writer, you know. What can I do?
Wow, yeah, I know the question. I ask myself the same question, every other day, so to speak. It is the matter of, I don't know whether, maybe this hairdresser of yours was referring to the World War II, who wants to die for Danzig, because yes, that was the German name of Gdansk. That used to be the German city. Yeah. So aren't you afraid to die for Danzig, to die for Gdansk? Maybe not. I would not go that far, you know, with the historical background. But I don't have any recipes for that, except for, goodness, it is It used to be, you know, when we were flying before February 22, we used to have not only iPhones, but normal planes, you know, and normal passenger flights. So it is not far away. It is just, it is all about mindsets. It is not far away. It used to be, well, Kiev, Amsterdam used to be 2 hours, 15 minutes flight. It cannot be far away. It is not any New Zealand. Give me a break, you know. It is far away in terms of, yes, in terms of mindset, which means entire, yes, as you put it, you know, very properly, gray area somewhere there in the east, everything covered with the gray mist. Okay, we don't, you know, differ one country from another. They all probably are this post-communist, dreary, and whatever. So it all starts, well, trying, you know, somehow to answer this question that we both ask ourselves. I'm just the writer, what can I do? It all starts with the language. Everything starts with the language. And every time, you know, I hear of, every time I am presented to the foreign audience by a moderator as, okay, Ukrainian writer, and Ukraine is a post-Soviet country, post-Soviet republic. Last time it was in Germany, and I had to interrupt a moderator and to say, look, guys, it's more or less like you were speaking of Germany. Like Germany is the former Third Reich.
A former German colony we were.
The former German, the former Third Reich. What's wrong with that? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that was a part of your political history, yeah, right? Okay, you were having this 12 years of the Third Reich, okay. We were having 70 years of the Soviet Republic, okay. But it does not mean that you were not having any other history except for the Third Reich, does it? And the same with Ukraine. We were having, you know, a millennium-old history with very complicated, very interesting and multifarious, bright and colorful. I would have preferred it to be more calm and peaceful, actually, but, okay, not, you know, with our, not with our geography. Well, but, okay, could you please stop using these terms which stopped being adequate some quarter of a century ago? The so-called transition period when you could have speak of Ukraine as of post-Soviet republic, you know, with these dreary, ruined post-communist cities and everything. It ended, it dates back to the 90s. Since then, okay, we have managed to build up quite a livable, don't be surprised, quite a livable country. To what extent it is livable, we ourselves were able to appreciate after February 22 with this 6 million of refugees who fled to the EU and discovered that, okay, that's quite comparable in terms of living, and some things in Ukraine are even better, and some things are better, you know, in the EU, in the European countries, here and there. Okay, you can learn, you can exchange, okay, you can compare, but that's life, okay. Well, but once you start with these Eastern countries, Western countries, once you start with these Cold War terms that stick to the to the current political discourse, starting with the elementary schools, you are dead because you use the same...
Yeah, you pull up the curtain again.
Absolutely, absolutely. You go on with the same language. You are still in 1989, where you still can see the collapse of the Soviet Union as something temporary. And yes, Putin, here comes Putin. Enter Putin, you know, and tells that now we are taking it back. Okay, and since in the meantime, you know, it was just a gray zone for you, you won't be very much impressed with this ambition. Okay, finally, okay, it will become familiar. Exactly. Finally, it is going to become again the way we are used to. So, yeah, language, correcting the language. Orwell was a genius. He was the first to have made this diagnosis. Every totalitarianism, every slavery starts with the language. Every misdeed starts with the language. Every social disease starts in the language. It is always the way people speak and how they name things. So naming things, okay, well, that's it.
Thank you. I'm going. My colleague Brit will come towards you and see if there's someone who wants to ask a question. Yes, please. Maybe in the meantime, let me tell you, because when I was in high school, which is 20 years ago, we went on exchange to Poland. And they came here, so there is some hope as well. 20 years ago we did that.
Thank you so much for the great discussion. Pani Oksana, I have a question to you. Basically, I wanted to share the stories because I think there were a lot of nice points made about how we could change our conversation. And at the same time, when the full-scale invasion started, my friends came here to the Netherlands, and basically Dutch people stood up for them and became their second families. They saved basically their lives. And it is not the only story of a Ukrainian family connecting to the Dutch family. And on the ground level, I see there is a lot of kind curiosity from the Dutch people coming to Ukrainians. And we bridge this gap of cultures and we make the understanding and connection on the personal level, which I cannot see any ignorance or arrogance in the people kindly asking me questions about my heritage and country. So I wanted to ask, like, Russia is investing so heavily all their money and power and resources to spread their propaganda across Europe. How do we bridge this gap on the national level beyond the personal context? Because I see that like what I invest in the personal level is something, but it's still not enough to oversound this Russian propaganda. So what would you advise, or how would your vision on that go? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you know, you cannot compete with the Russian money, nor with the decades or even centuries, you know, that Russia had to impose its propaganda and its mindset upon Dutch people. The personal level actually works very well, and it can be most efficient once you bring with you a number of links. Once you introduce your Dutch friends not only to your personal story, but to the Ukrainian books they might find to read, the Ukrainian music they might found interesting, to the Ukrainian films that might be available. Culture is the language of personal human communication, which in the same time works like, you know, people-to-people message. So this entire business with Russia promoting its culture, it is not because, you know, Russian leaders have always been, you know, Dostoevsky-loving people. No way. No way. They know, but they know how it works. They know what soft power is. While for Ukraine, you know, it came as a late discovery that that culture is actually tantamount to security, because those known via their culture are protected with their culture. I always give the same example. Like when Notre Dame in Paris was on fire, the whole world was on fire because everyone, for every European or for everyone with any, you know, Western educational background, Notre Dame has a whole bunch of associations, you know, starting with, I don't know, Hugo, and ending with the musical and the songs from the musical. Various when in the spring of 2022, St. Sofia in Kiev was under the threat of Russian attacks, and me was then jumping from one European scene to another, screaming that St. Sofia is in danger. I was, you know, receiving black faces, and I had to explain that, my goodness, St. Sofia is 100 years older than Notre Dame, and yes, that is the only surviving, the best surviving gem of Byzantine architecture. That's what remained out of the Byzantium, you know, Byzantium culture. If you want a sample of Byzantium architecture, yes, you have to go there. I'm not speaking of the Ukrainian Baroque and all this, you know, later, you know, things that were added to the original building of the early 11th century. But, okay, this is not taken, even though it is on the list of the World Heritage. It is not known to the point to be a part of everybody's cultural heritage. UNESCO list is one thing, you know. Personal heritage, personal cultural heritage is another thing. And to include Ukrainian culture at whatever level, you know, whatever from Ukrainian culture, be it, I don't know, Lesia Ukrainka or their daughters, does not matter. God forbid, I mean. Well, but something, you know, that makes this culture, this country, these people, their language, their way of thinking, you know, the richness of their ways alive for your Dutch friends. You can do that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the discussion today. My question is connected to the previous one, I guess. And for Pani Oksana, and I believe also for Pani Lisa, part of the discussion was the fact that Ukraine has been an undiscovered country for the world, for Europe, and that now we need to reshape and rebalance the scale of memories inside of European history. Mm-hmm. And the question is, what potentials do you see for Ukrainian historians, journalists, and Dutch historians and journalists to create a Ukrainian-Dutch story, including grain trade of the Middle Ages, including Ivan Mazepa, political leader of the Ukrainian hetmanate of the 17th century, studying artillery in Deventer in 1650s, including Abraham Bradius.
Keep going. It's
Abraham Bradius, the director of the Maritz House Museum of the 19th century, visiting Kiev, Hanenka's art collection, and, for example, Ukrainian choir of Alexander Koshitz performing Shedrik, known in the world as Carol of the Bells, in The Hague, Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and so on. Mm-hmm. What are the potentials for this? Do you see any? Thank you.
Well, that's a wonderful question. Well, I think you already see that a lot is changing. For example, I think there are also some Ukrainian to Dutch translators here. They're young, they're not old. So that's amazing. They have a lot of time to translate work. I think that's also, they're very shy and laughing now in the corner. I think that's one of the cool things, but I'm diverting already from your question. What you also see is that right now, young people, for example, also from Slavic studies, are finally, it feels like Slavic studies is also finally opening up to other countries. It has been very, very Russia-focused for a very long time. I think even only when the invasion started, but correct me if I'm wrong, Ukrainian as a language became part of the curriculum. That's extremely late. It's way too late. But things are changing, and it now has, I think it already disappeared again from the curriculum, but I'm not sure. I hope it's still there. But it has to do with these waves. So I think there are a lot of, with all the Ukrainian people coming here, for example, the other woman raising her hand and talking about how to talk with Dutch people about culture. Sadly, for a lot of Ukrainian people who are now living here, for example, some friends of mine have an organization in Rotterdam. It's called Fataha. They do a lot through cultural organization, connecting their Ukrainian culture and history, for example, through Vyshyvanka Day, where they talk about the history of Vyshyvanka, the meaning of it, but also include a lot of Ukrainian history that is embedded in the Netherlands. And at the same time telling people about, for example, Holodomor or the Ukrainian past, which a lot of people also don't know anything about, Dutch people don't know anything about. I think these people have become more and more actors in the cultural field who have sadly gotten a very big role. And I think as Dutch people who are interested in Slavic languages or Slavic culture, to make it eventjes to put it in a hokje, which is not good. I think there's also a task at hand to maybe change the focus for a bit. This is not an answer to your question, but I think we have to refocus and leave some other countries aside for a longer period of time and create also in the academic world more space for all the other histories and stories, because it's now finally bubbling up a little bit. But if I do my research for novels, for example, there's still a very big lack of academic resources, which means you have still have this skill. So if you know a lot about it, maybe start a platform or something, another platform.
I have an example how this can be done, the Ukrainian Dutch story. If I am allowed, to, I don't know whether John Steenen is in the audience. I've got his letter. He is.
He is.
Ah, wow, okay. So I'm sorry, I'm stealing your show, but I have to tell it just in a couple of lines. So it all started with this book. There is a passage in this chapter from the 40s, from this war period. The passage in which there was a very brief mentioning of the Belgian who was in the ranks of the UPA, of the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, serving at their clandestine radio station. They were having their radio station in one of the caves in the Carpathians, trying to broadcast to the West the voice of free Ukraine, to knock, this West, the door of Europe back then in 1945. And he was broadcasting in French and in English, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, then there was this, So I just mentioned in one line the Belgian he said this and that. And then Marina Snook, who has done the translation of the novel, who was translating one of my interviews where I mentioned this guy named Albert Hazenbrooks as kind of one of these genius Lotzi, you know, whom I feel as my spirit helping me here in this Flemish lands, you know, when I was residing and working on there were many residences. Okay. So Marina was lost with the spelling. She contacted me saying, you know, Gazenbrooks, okay, it can be put down in 3 or 4 different ways. I said I had absolutely no idea. I did not know anything about the guy. No one knew anything about the guy except for this mere fact that I've told you. Then Marina contacted John Stinnen, with whom she was in touch about, you know, he was traveling to Ukraine and everything, and he got interested, like Belgian, Hazenbrooks, serving in the Ukrainian army, coming from where? Okay, so he started to do the research, getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And finally, he digged out the full story. The amazing story of this man, yes, how he was conscripted by the Nazis, how he was, you know, taken to this western part of Ukraine, how he fled, you know, from the Nazis, and how he fell into the hands of the Ukrainian guerrilla army in the forest, and how he ended up in their ranks, and how then they were attacked by NKVD troops. And he spent 8 years in Gulag, how he was released in the first, you know, team of foreigners who were released from the Gulag after the Stalin's death, and he returned to Brugge. He was trying then to tell to his compatriots about what was going on up there, and so on. Well, anyway, he failed. Of course, he failed because no one was interested. That was too far away. Yeah. Anyway, so all these years after he died in 1979. John Stinnen, you know, surfaces his story, finds his descendants, finds his daughter, finds his grandchildren. Posthumously, Albert Hazenbrooks gets the order for merit from the Ukrainian state. Well, and now, on April 27, John Stinnen was awarded knighthood from your king for his work in memory. What was the formula? I don't remember, John. What you should tell us. Memory and commemorating the victims of the World War II.
Fantastic.
So I think it makes quite a spectacular Dutch-Ukrainian story.
Yes, absolutely.
A great sample to follow. You know how it may work, and it really deserves a movie. The script absolutely deserves a movie. Maybe, you know, could be a joint venture of Ukrainian and Dutch filmmakers. And I'm really happy that this book helped, you know, Albert Gazenbrooks to be resurrected.
I know there are more questions, but I'm going to ask you to ask them at the bar, because I think it would be really nice, also for everyone in the audience, if we would end with this fragment about the beauty of Kiev. So I'll ask you if you would read it for us, because I think that's the most beautiful way to send everyone.
But we have to
out.
explain, okay,
Yes.
that this cover design made by a Ukrainian artist. It presents a picture of Reitarska, one of the streets in Kiev, which is mentioned in the book. And here they are, the characters in the very end of the book. It is not only about the beauty of Kiev.
But more, but
it is, yeah. It explains this very brief excerpt. It explains the cover design, why it was chosen for the book, and in the same time, I think it rings with the premonition of war, which must have already been there back in 2009 when I was writing. At least now it reads a little bit differently than back then. They stop at a crosswalk. In the openings between buildings, the sunset, already pricked with streetlights, smoldering, bluish and ashen. The windows of the top floors flash with every shade of fire, and in the dusk, pulling below the red signals and at intersections, the tail lights of passing cars glow mysterious and sweet like pomegranate seeds. Look, she touches his elbow. At what? Look at how magnificent the city is in this light, she wants to say. This is the only time when you can sense its rhythmic breathing, when all the dirt people tracked in during the day is extinguished by dusk, and even the noise seems muffled, like when you instinctively lower your voice in low light. It doesn't last long this time, half an hour perhaps. It is a change of rhythm, like shifting gears or catching your breath. The tired masses of walking folk, worn an inexorably uniform look on their faces, head home to their concrete shells. And restaurants, theaters, bars have not yet taken on the next human wave with its fresh charge of excitement. And in this interval, if you catch it just right, you can sense the city's own pulse, those anxious currents of waiting, pleasure, and dread that thread through it, and inaudible music, and feel numb with the love for this city, so defenseless in fact. And here the trees grow through it, unstoppable, fearsome. The cottonwoods on its boulevard, the apricot trees and the cherries in the cubical canyons between its high rises. You can feel the explosive, autonomous force, the same will to grow that is now inside me, and that is not given to anything made by the human hand. We do not notice it during the day, but should people abandon the city, the force of the trees would break free and run rampant without constraint until the eyeless ruins of buildings begin to sink in the boiling woods, in the wild primeval thickets, the same as the ones from which the city once emerged some 2,000 years ago.
thank you very much. Thank you both, Lisa Veda, Oksana Zabuzhko, for being here and for this conversation. And thank you for being here and for listening. And I hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.